Hey, this is Cameron. Welcome back to the Busy Gardener channel. Today, we are going to cover something that is probably the most requested thing in the comments of these videos. We're going to cover how I do my irrigation. Let's get busy. One of the things that plants need, in addition to nutrition and soil and sun, is water. I mean, that's just like the basis of all living animals and plants, and all living things on earth need water in order to survive. And so how in the world do you water 60-something trees with any sort of regularity? I mean, every one of them has different watering needs, different watering amounts. Some, like cacti, are very don't need a ton of water, whereas, you know, tropical things need a ton of water. So trying to figure that out and have it be where it doesn't become an all-consuming thing is really crucial. And I want to show you the way that we have done stuff here on the Busy Gardener orchard. And so the main thing that I rely on are drip emitters. I use a drip system. And I want to talk through kind of the fundamentals of what a drip system is. Basically, a drip system is where you've got water that's being piped in some form that is popping out into these small emitters, and these emitters allow you to have varying amounts of water come out. You're able to decide based on the emitter that you choose what the direction. Do you want it to be a 90 degree, or do you want it to be like a half circle, or like this one, do you want it to be 360 degrees in every direction? And so it allows you to tailor the direction of what's being watered, which is wonderful in helping to keep down weeds. Another thing that's good about that is that you're able to not use more water than you need. So you're not watering areas that you don't want to get water, you're only watering the types of plants that do need to get water. Finally, one reason why drip emitters are good is erosion and water waste. You know, the ground can only absorb so much water at any given point. So if you came through with a hose and just watered like crazy, especially like this silty soil that we have up here, a bunch of water would just run off, and little would get down into the root system of those plants, and a whole lot of it would just be off where you don't want it. So what this does is these drip emitters, rather than a hose putting out 220 gallons an hour, one of these puts out maybe 14 gallons an hour. And so the rate at which that thing is being watered is a lot lower. So I'll turn on my system, let's say for 2 or 3 or 4 hours or whatever it is, depending on the watering needs, and allow it to go like that. I want to walk through and show you kind of how I've spaced some of these and show a few examples of how I've spaced them with the individual trees and what I'm using for that, as well as how I'm kind of, what's the initiator of it? Where does the water source start for us? And so maybe we'll start with the water source. Let's take a look at it. All right, so this is kind of the brains, if you will, or the little central hub of how we handle our irrigation up here. For drip systems, there are a couple of things that need to be true. One is you want the water, the pressure that's coming in, to be stepped down. Drip systems are made to be used between like 25 and 35 or 40 PSI. It'll usually say on whatever it is on what the PSI is. So you want to use something that's a pressure regulator that brings that pressure down. Something you also want to do is, because these have such small openings, generally you need and want some sort of filter. And in this case here we have an inline filter. We have a pressure regulator here. This is an inline filter. I'm always reluctant to unscrew this just because I don't ever want to create a leak, but this has a filter that allows the water to pass through and catches any debris, so that way that debris doesn't end up inside the emitters eventually. And so that you want that to be in place. Now, those are two kind of basics that ought to be true everywhere that you're doing a drip system: pressure regulation, and you want filtration. And these are both easily found. What you do after that is really up to you. I wanted to do something that is as automatic as possible without having to think about it. And so what I did was I have this water supply coming up here through this pipe, down through the pressure regulator, the filter, going down here into this irrigation valve. It's like a sprinkler valve. And so what this is allowing us to do is turn this thing on and off on an automated schedule that's tied into my irrigation controller. My irrigation controller is attached to Wi-Fi. It's able to see based on the weather, whether or not it ought to be giving it more or less water. So I love having this just be an automatic process. That's really important to me because I don't want to have to be thinking about it. I get busy, I get sidetracked, and so that's how we do it. Now, I have it going from there in this case. I have 3 main half-inch lines that are coming off of this, and that's through the kind of this manifold here. It's kind of a 3, I created this 3 outlet manifold, and each one is going to this half-inch drip line. And so this is kind of the main line, and on each of these 3 lines I've installed a shutoff switch. So this way I'm able to have different lines on or different lines off depending on the season. For example, when all of the deciduous trees are dormant, I don't need everything being watered. I only really want the citrus to be watered at that time. So this allows me to turn off the deciduous trees, turn on just the citrus, and the subtropical like the avocado, the banana and stuff. This is kind of the brain, how I have it set up. This has worked so well since we set it up a few years ago. Let's go talk about the individual emitters and some of the spacing. Okay, so here we are beneath our nectarine planting here, and right in the middle of this thing, I see that we've got this little 360-degree basic emitter, and what that emitter does is it sends, as I just described, water out in 360 degrees. This is the top of it. The anatomy of a drip system is you've got water coming in through this little 1/4-inch pipe or tubing, and then you can choose the emitter, kind of choose your own adventure with these things. You take it and it's got a little threading on it, and you just thread it in place, put it in the ground, attach this to the drip line, and water will come out. And if you decide that you need to put either a higher amount of water coming out of this or you want a different pattern of spray, then you can just unscrew this and put a new one in. Something you want to look at as you make your decision on these is you want to look at how many gallons per hour this puts out, as well as the diameter, what area is going to cover. I think this one puts out something like 14 gallons an hour, and the diameter I think is maybe 7 feet, which, because I have these planted pretty close, maybe 24 inches to 36 inches on center, the trunks from trunk to trunk, I use one that has a little bit smaller pattern, doesn't put out as much water. But some of those need a little bit further, or they need a little bit more water. And so this one, for example, is I think 22 gallons per hour. The diameter is 14 feet instead of 7 feet. So this is gonna have a spray that goes out further, and it's gonna pump out more water per hour. And so as you see the needs of your trees, you might find yourself swapping these out, as I have. So for example, on this nectarine here, we've got this 14 gallon an hour, maybe 6-7 feet across. But then over here in our cherry planting, I noticed that this cherry will exhibit usually some kind of dehydration stress and lack of water stress. The leaves will kind of be drooping. And so I have something that's putting out more gallons per hour for these cherry plantings to keep them happy. What I've got here, and you can't see it, and I don't want to really uncover it. I'll show you an area where it has naturally gotten exposed, but we have that 1/2-inch line running through the rows here. And using the barbed end here, there's a hole punch that punctures a little hole in the 1/2-inch tubing, and this just pops in. It is so stinking easy. If you've ever done, like sprinklers for your lawn, you know that working with that PVC piping, it's so rigid, you've got to make sure that the lengths are exactly right. This is so easy to use. Once you've laid your initial half line, you could seriously get the entire orchard. I think I did in a single afternoon. I was able to go through, run the tubing, run the extension tubing, and just plug it into these lines. I'd mentioned to you that I have the deciduous and subtropical on different lines. It's okay to run this 1/4-inch line, all the way over there if you're needing to get it into a specific 1/2 inch. So very, very flexible. In terms of its use, you're not really tied into anything. It's very easy to deploy, and I think you'll find it really accessible. Let's take a look at some of that 1/2-inch line so you have an idea of what that looks like. As we're going to look at the 1/2 inch line, here's an example on these blackberries and boysenberries, how we're using a semicircle. It's only sending water out in a semicircle, 180 degrees. And so that way it's not watering this mulch over here, it's only spraying into the planting and making sure that this plant here is getting watered and this blackberry plant here is getting watered. So really the row is getting watered without water getting thrown in every other direction. Here is the 1/2 inch eggshell. I'll show you right here. This is a great example of exposed 1/2 inch. So this is the 1/2 inch line that's feeding the rest of the whole setup. Here you see that we've got that barb going into the 1/2 inch. That's following this tubing here, going into this emitter. That's a 360 degree emitter. And this 360 degree emitter is watering both this section of Pluary and this Santa Rosa plum on this side. And what we've done on this row is in between each planting, we've got a 360 degree emitter. So that way it's getting this side and that side, and we have one planted every space in between. Kind of a pro tip, which I need to come back through and refresh them. Let's jump over here. And this is faded, but if you look down here, you see how I've got this bright pink flag tape? The point of that is you attach that so you don't step on these things. When you step on sprinklers, they break. And so I try to, especially with my big fat feet, so I try to avoid that, and putting some flag tape on that has raised the visibility, and there's a ton of contrast. So that's something that might be helpful for you in that case. I noticed that there was one that the top had broken off, and we're gonna talk through why you ought to periodically come out and check your stuff. Let's go take a look at it. Okay, here we are. There's one downside. If there's one major downside to drip irrigation versus using something like a broadcast sprinkler, like a big rainbird thing, it's that these little emitters sometimes will just break or get clogged for no reason, and you won't know it until something's dead. And so it's a good idea to periodically, I don't know, once a month, come out and just run your system and just walk around and make sure that everything is emitting. Now these are identical emitters. This one is missing something that this one has. And you can see that the top of this is literally blown off. And I noticed that there was something askew when I walked through here, and you're seeing spray, and then just here was like a little geyser coming straight up. And so that was just going straight up. That's not watering out here. It's just going straight up and coming right down. And so this isn't serving its purpose. So we need to replace it. And we're gonna do that right now. I'm gonna show you how easy it is to swap something like this out. Just uncover the line that you have. And you can either try to unplug this from the 1/2 inch, but I don't really wanna damage that or have to put it in what they call a goof plug and poke another hole. I'm just going to, in line, I'm gonna first of all take this thing apart. All I'm gonna do is with my pruning shears, come through, cut this line, take this new one, plug it in. This takes a little bit of hand strength, and that was surprising to me at first. Take out this old busted one. Sorry, Kyle, for getting you with some water there. Put in the new spike. Take this here, cover it with some mulch or whatever you want to cover it. If you want to bury it, take a minute to do that. This is now going to water. How easy was that? What did it take, a minute? Less than a minute? One snip, one plug, and you're done. So that's one thing that I really like about it. Even though the reliability is a little bit suspect sometimes, I do like the idea that it's still so easy to repair these things, make changes when you need to. So that's what we do across the entire orchard with. So the fickleness of these things getting clogged is, there are some real world issues with that. Because beautiful passion fruit that has done such a wonderful job, gorgeous flowers growing along this fence so nicely, wasn't doing anything. And I thought, why isn't this thing growing? The other one grew so prolifically, as you've seen in other videos. Why is this thing just still almost the same size as when I bought it? So I came down here and I turned on the water, and this thing wasn't having any water at all come out of it. Not a single drop was coming out. I thought, what in the world? And so I started wiggling this thing. the little emitter here. This is more of like a dripper. It doesn't shoot so much water in every direction. That's more directional and just puts more water out in a smaller area. And what I noticed was there were little pieces of worm coming out of this. And so I unscrewed the top of this, and out through that came worm. Little chunks of worm. It was disgusting. But we got it cleared out, and it was pretty amazing to see with just a little bit of water added to this thing. This thing is just totally blown up now. Look at this. Look at these beautiful flowers that this passion fruit puts out. And these turn into that beautiful fruit. This is the Frederick passion fruit. And like I mentioned, each one of these has kind of their own watering needs, and you're able to customize depending on what the various needs are. Like that banana, that needs lots of water to be happy. It's, you know, tropical plant. Avocados, they're notoriously thirsty plants. They need a lot of water. And as you follow this channel, these avocados, oh my goodness. To see this thing actually alive and thriving, look at all these buds that are coming out of here. I'm so happy about that. But they need more water, and so maybe there's an emitter that wasn't going to put out enough water for the plant. Even though I have these higher gallon per hour emitters here, something you can also do is, you might see that this one is here, but I also have one hidden under there. I have a second one that's coming and watering this Hass avocado, and making sure that this has enough water. And so that's another way to do it too. If there isn't a single emitter that is going to give you as much water as you need, you can just double up, run 2 lines from your 1/2 inch, and that'll help water to make sure all this wonderful avocado fruit on here grows. That looks like it got cut off. Okay, well that's not part of it. I don't think that was any, I have no idea what that could have been. Is that even an act of God? What is that? That's no animal. Who knows? These things need water in order to be happy. You're able to give them water with the flexibility of a drip system. And again, you don't have to repipe stuff. What would you do if you needed to do a second pipe of like PVC pipe? Would you have to go and dig up and run? Or are you able to just quickly zap in another 1/2 inch or a 1/4 inch and just run it over here? So you can see enough water in these 2 avocados, even with the intense heat that we've had recently, are both thriving really well in this environment. Well, as you can see, I mean, all of these emitters with a drip system can fit inside a little box here to make it super convenient. You just walk through the orchard, put in a little pair of clippers in there, and that's all you end up needing. Drip irrigation is by far the easiest, most flexible method that I've seen as I've had to do a bunch of work in my yard and running irrigation lines. Drip systems make this process so easy. So I would say if there are a couple of takeaways, do a drip system that is tied to your irrigation or some sort of timer, so that way you're not having to come out and manually initiate stuff. So that way when a heat wave comes through, you don't get blasted out because you forgot to water. I know in some cases, you know, you want to go out and you want to water some things by hand. If you want to do that too, but we found that drip irrigation, especially for the number of trees that we've got going on here, has proven to be the most flexible method. Well, I want to thank you for tuning in to this episode of The Busy Gardener, where we walk through how I do my irrigation. I hope that answered some questions for you, but I know that it may have also raised a number of questions for you. So if that's the case, put those in the description below or in the comments area below. I always go through there and make sure to interact as much as I can. If you're not yet subscribed to the Busy Gardener channel, I would love for you to do that. If you feel like we've earned your subscription with this and the other videos, that would be a great thing to do. Hit the notification bell so you can know when new videos are being posted, and hit that like button because that lets other people know about the channel. It makes us feel oh so good. Well, whether you've got 1 drip emitter in your orchard or 500, till next time, stay busy.